Some companies get a lot of crap. Often, this is justified. It's the result of years of bad decisions by bigwig corporate managers who take advantage of their customers and employees. Other times, it's because they've made a couple of huge mistakes in recent memory and have lost all credibility as a result. These mistakes could have been malicious or simply a result of incompetence, but regardless, their customers have lost faith and no longer trust them. For the third type of this phenomenon, we have to look at a company who has had a troubled past but has made an active effort to redeem themselves. They were previously mocked and ridiculed as a result of their foolish decisions, but now they are trying to right the ship. It's an admirable endeavor, one that requires vast expense and patience, but if they are successful, they could regain all of the frustrated fans that they lost. You know who I'm talking about. Of course, Bethesda Game Studios. Time and time again, they show everyone how pro-consumer companies should handle releases and DLC. And honestly, I can't stop filleting them. Okay, I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. No, those guys.
They suck.
Did you hear they're reselling chunks of Fallout 3 in Fallout 76 now? Yeah, Creation Club for the win. I swear those guys are the worst. Seriously, fudge those guys. Hashtag family friendly. I'm actually talking about Ubisoft. You see, they've done wonders for the industry in terms of R&D and tech, something that we'll discuss in a few moments. But first, we need to elaborate a bit on Ubisoft as a company. After all, the title of this video is "We Take Ubisoft for Granted," and that's a statement that I stand behind. I don't think Ubisoft gets enough credit for the games and the development that they do. When we discuss some of the most prolific developers in gaming, we often throw out studios like CD Projekt Red, Rocksteady, Rockstar, but you rarely hear Ubisoft mentioned, despite the fact that year after year, Ubisoft pushes the tech envelope and are consistently responsible for some of the biggest leaps that we've had in recent memory. Now, don't think I don't realize how ballsy my claims are. I know that many of you are probably writing out your comments at this very moment, so I'm going to break all of this down. All I ask is that you hear me out. And no, Ubisoft is not paying me to make a video praising them. I swear, every time I compliment any studio or developer, 5 people in the comments freak out and demand to know how much I was paid. It's ridiculous. I am not being paid, and I've never been paid by them for anything, and I never will be paid by them for anything. I'm just a gamer who loves their work and thinks that they deserve more credit paid unto them. But first, what has Ubisoft done that made them the target of all of this online displeasure? Well, most of their credibility was lost due to 2 major mistakes made in the year of 2014. You see, this was the year that they were set to make huge leaps into the next generation of gaming. The PS4 and Xbox One had just launched, and this was Ubisoft's chance to push the envelope and separate themselves. The problem is, they did just that, but they pushed way too hard. Giggity. The first snafu was related to Watch Dogs, which launched May 27th of 2014. Ubisoft had shown off the game to press and media for months, releasing highly polished and scripted gameplay demos to the public, and even encouraging players around the world that the game would meet and exceed expectations that were set by said demos. Everything about the game seemed great. The graphics were incredible, the gameplay seemed endless, and comparisons between Watch Dogs and Grand Theft Auto began cropping up almost immediately. I even recall one prominent gaming journalist who said it resembled a true next generation Grand Theft Auto. Seriously, hype was through the roof when the game launched. And, well, let's just say that some people were dissatisfied. You see, most of this had to do with the fact that the graphics were heavily downgraded from what was shown off at E3. Furthermore, the game was sold as having a fully dynamic world within which you were able to hack and slash into almost any building or space, but this was not the case at launch. The game was bland, and while parts of it were fun, it lacked the true next-generation feel that it was sold on. Likely due to the fact that it was actually cross-platform and cross-generation, releasing on the 360 360 and PS3 in addition to the new consoles. Regardless, the game wasn't received very well. So, after this, Ubisoft was facing a new type of challenge. They had just launched Watch Dogs to critical frustration, and they were revving up to release Assassin's Creed Unity, which was to be their first game in the series to launch exclusively on the PlayStation 4 and Xbox One. But as I'm sure you're aware, the same story was true of Unity as was true with Watch Dogs. They promised too much and were too ambitious. At launch, the co-op mechanics were underdeveloped and the game in general was bugged beyond belief. Now, I've done critiques of almost every Assassin's Creed game. I love them to death, and Unity is actually a weird one for me. You see, the game is actually really good. There's a real gem in here. But the problem is that when it launched, it was so broken that it was borderline unplayable for many people. Even today, remnants of these tech issues can still be felt, such as glitched animations and some of the worst model swap pop-in that I've ever seen in a AAA game. All this being said, we had two games that could have been something great, but were too ambitious and were oversold. As they say, the only impression that matters is the first one. And the unfortunate reality of these releases is that they mortally damaged the reputation of Ubisoft, especially Assassin's Creed Unity. They went from being one of the big three developers who are always pushing the tech boundary and dropped into the same ranking as EA and Activision. People looked at them as big business first and a gaming company second. They were more concerned with the bottom line and rushing a game out before it was ready than they were with the game's polish or quality. And the thing is, Ubisoft actually realized this. And I think this is something that people often forget when we talk about a big corporation and company like Ubisoft. We forget that a company is, by definition, a collection of people. These people have feelings, emotions, and pride. I mean, don't you think that two especially terrible launches would seriously upset and depress the people who worked on them for years? Do you think that they were actually proud of those releases? No. I mean, sure, some ethically bankrupt individuals and managers probably didn't care either way. They got their paychecks and bounced. But we should all remember that these gaming companies are comprised of countless artists who are pouring their passion and love into these projects. And you'd better believe that stuff like this upsets them. But perhaps more importantly, it motivates them to do better. Almost immediately, they began shaking things up. Managers were fired, hierarchies were restructured, and new quality control methods were implemented. And over the course of the next few years, Ubisoft began working on two new endeavors to try and win back their credibility. They were going to try and reinvent two of their most popular franchises in one of the most ambitious ways possible. Firstly, for Assassin's Creed, they knew that all the games had steadily been growing and getting bigger. They were becoming less about stealth and more about melee combat, but more than anything, Assassin's Creed was starting to focus on a part of the games that had always been there and had always been a fan favorite feature from the beginning, and that would be the world. You see, Assassin's Creed had been recreating vast swaths of ancient and medieval locations for almost a decade, and time again, players made it clear that they were always blown away by the quality of these recreations. Heck, they're even using the model of Notre Dame from Assassin's Creed Unity to help rebuild it after the fire in early 2019. I mean, I can say, for one, that my favorite part of most Assassin's Creed games are the worlds that they place the game within. A recreation of industrial era London or revolutionary Paris or even the early American colonies. They're all incredibly well done and are intoxicating to explore. And when they took these worlds and mixed them with the free running system that they had been developing since the Prince of Persia games, these locations became entirely separate worlds to explore. And so, Ubisoft decided to make those worlds the stars of the next games, and they greenlit an effective reboot, at least in my opinion, of the franchise with Assassin's Creed Origins, and with Ancient Egypt being the centerpiece of the entire campaign. And yes, I said Ancient Egypt. Like the entirety of Ancient Egypt. Like the whole freaking country. And they were successful. Say what you will about the game, but I think it is objectively amazing in terms of scope, scale, and technology. Sure, the writing could have used some polish, but in terms of what they were actually able to achieve, it is very impressive. At launch, the game received vast amounts of praise for its use of Ubisoft's technical advances, such as water physics, data streaming, animation fluidity, and graphical fidelity. Beyond this, Origins marked the start of a new phase of the Assassin's Creed franchise, a point where the games would transition into open-world, exploration-based narrative RPGs. Simply, this was a massive departure from where the series had started, but Ubisoft wasn't going to stop there. They had another revolutionary idea up their sleeves. Now that I say that out loud, that doesn't sound right. Can you have an idea up your sleeves? It's like a trick up your sleeves or something, like a magician. I don't know. I'm moving on. Watch Dogs had struggled to stand out over the first 2 releases. Yes, there was a second game that I'm going to get to in a second. The first game disappointed many, and the second title failed to gain a lot of traction with widespread audiences. According to my research, it looks like by most estimates, Watch Dogs 2 sold around 26% of the total units when compared to the original in the first month. For many, this seemed like it could potentially be the death knell for the franchise. It was mortally wounded, and the customer base just wasn't that interested in the game. And so, when Ubisoft announced that they were working on a sequel, it took a lot of us by surprise. We all knew that for Ubisoft to bring the franchise back within 3 years of the second game, they must have something surprising and new to show to players, and oh did they. They showed off Watch Dogs Legion at E3 2019 and explained how the game was built around the idea that players could play the game however they want, with whoever they want. I know, sounds like typical marketing jargon, but in this case, the tech backed it up. The idea is that the game is defined by the team that you assemble with any non-player character or NPC in the game. Except technically, I guess the term NPC or non-player character won't actually apply to Watch Dogs Legion because the player can take control of any NPC and turn them into a player character. So that's kind of cool. Doubtless, this raises many questions, such as how will the story work with this? If I'm playing with a granny, that sounded weird. If I'm using an old woman as my player character, how will the game's narrative approach her as opposed to a 6'6" Greek Adonis who is a convicted murderer? And well, rest assured, it seems that they've taken many steps to keep the game working well. In fact, if you'd like to hear more about how they're doing this, I actually made another video deep diving into everything that I just pointed out. A card will pop out right about now if you want to check it out. But the point is, Ubisoft is not resting on their laurels. They're actively pursuing one of the most ambitious game design ideas in recent memory. You don't have to like them, but it's a fact that these are 2 incredibly ambitious approaches to franchises which were already established. Now, admittedly, Watch Dogs Legion hasn't come out yet, and there's a real risk of this falling flat and not living up to the hype, but undoubtedly, this game is one of the most ambitious that's been announced by any studio in the last few years. But what's the point of all of this? Well, I find Ubisoft to be one of the most consistently impressive studios in the industry, and it doesn't seem that they get the credit for the amazing advances that they've made. Sure, they've screwed up plenty, and I do find myself frustrated at times with some of their business decisions, but that doesn't change the fact that they are, in my eyes, one of the most prolific forces in the entirety of the gaming industry today. And I just want to take this moment to say to Ubisoft, but more specifically to all of the amazingly gifted artists, programmers, and designers that work within their offices, thank you.